Beyond the white picket fences and rolling farmland of northwestern Connecticut, there exists a place where the trees grow too thick, where birds refuse to sing, and where madness waits among the ruins of stone foundations swallowed by forest. This is Dudleytown, the village of the damned. And what happened here defies every rational explanation you might cling to. When Ed and Lorraine Warren walked into those woods in 1974, even they, veterans of thousands of paranormal investigations, were unprepared for what they would encounter. This is not a story about ghosts haunting a single house. This is about something far older, far darker, and far more patient. This is about a curse that crossed an ocean and poisoned the very soil beneath an entire village. The story begins not in Connecticut, but in England in the year 1510, when Edmund Dudley, nobleman and advisor to King Henry VII, was led to the executioner's block. His crime was treason. His punishment was death. But as the blade fell and his head separated from his body, something else happened according to legend. A curse fell upon the Dudley bloodline, a spiritual stain that would follow his descendants through generations, across continents, and into the New World. Whether you believe in such things or not, what happened next cannot be easily dismissed. In the 1740s, members of the Dudley family and others bearing that surname arrived in the Berkshire Hills of Connecticut and established a settlement deep in the dense forest. They built homes, they raised families, they tried to carve out a life in the wilderness. But from the very beginning, something was wrong. General Herman Swift was one of the early settlers. He brought his wife Mary to Dudleytown, and together they built a life in that isolated community. Then one afternoon, lightning struck Mary Swift dead where she stood. Herman watched his wife die in an instant, burned and broken by a bolt from the sky. He never recovered. Neighbors reported seeing him wandering the village muttering to himself, his eyes vacant, his mind shattered. He lived the rest of his short life in a fog of insanity, never once regaining the clarity he had before his wife's death. His was only the first tragedy in a long line that would define Dudleytown. John Patrick Brophy came next. He moved to Dudleytown with his wife and children, hoping to start fresh in the Connecticut hills. Tuberculosis took his wife slowly and painfully. He buried her in the rocky soil, then his children disappeared. They walked into the forest one day and were never seen again. Search parties combed the woods for weeks. No trace of them was ever found. Brophy himself died not long after, a broken man haunted by the loss of his entire family. Other families met similar fates. Residents reported hearing voices in the night, seeing shadows moving between the trees where no person stood, feeling an oppressive weight that made breathing difficult and thinking nearly impossible. Crops failed, livestock died, people went mad, one by one. The families of Dudleytown packed what they could and fled. By the mid-1800s, the village was completely abandoned. The forest moved in quickly, reclaiming the land, swallowing the homes and roads and fields that people had worked so hard to create. But the darkness did not leave with the people. It stayed, soaked into the ground, waiting. In 1892, a man named William Clark, a scholar and researcher, decided to build a summer home on the abandoned property. He had heard the stories, but dismissed them as folklore and superstition. He and his wife spent pleasant weekends there through the spring and into summer. Then one Friday evening, Clark arrived at the property alone, planning to prepare the house for his wife's arrival the next day. When she arrived Saturday morning, he found her in a state of complete psychological collapse. She was rocking back and forth, screaming about creatures that had come from the trees. She spoke of demons with hollow eyes that had surrounded the house in the night, pressing against the windows, whispering her name. Clark tried to calm her, tried to convince her it had been a nightmare, but she would not be consoled. Her mind was gone. He took her away from Dudleytown that very day and never returned. His wife never recovered her sanity. As the 20th century progressed, Dudleytown became known in paranormal circles as a place of genuine spiritual danger. Visitors who ventured into the ruins, now completely overgrown with forest, reported feelings of intense dread, disorientation, and the unshakable sensation of being watched. Photographs taken on the property often showed strange anomalies, shadows where no shadows should be, shapes in the background that had not been visible to the naked eye. Those who stayed too long reported that the psychological effects followed them home. Depression, paranoia, intrusive thoughts, nightmares that felt more real than dreams. Animals brought onto the property became frantic, pulling at their leashes, whimpering. Desperate to escape, the very air seemed wrong. This was the place Ed and Lorraine Warren entered in the early 1970s. They had faced demonic possession, haunted objects, malevolent spirits in homes across the country, but Dudleytown was different. Lorraine, a clairvoyant who could sense spiritual presences, described the experience as walking into a fog of oppression so thick she could barely move through it. She said it was not like encountering a single entity or even multiple entities haunting a location. It was as though the darkness had become part of the land itself, woven into the trees and stones and soil. She felt it pressing down on her from above, rising up from below, closing in from all sides. There was no single source, no one spirit to confront. The entire area was saturated with something ancient and malevolent. Ed Warren meticulously researched the history of the Dudley family and the village itself. He traced the lineage back to Edmund Dudley and the execution in 1510. He documented every tragedy, every death, every case of madness that had occurred in Dudleytown over more than a century. The pattern was undeniable. It was too consistent, too repetitive across too many different families to be explained by coincidence or environmental factors. Ed came to believe that the curse on the Dudley bloodline was real, that it had followed the family to Connecticut, and that it had taken root in that specific location in a way that transformed the land itself into something hostile to human life. The Warrens filmed a Halloween special at Dudleytown, documenting the ruins and the oppressive atmosphere. They interviewed locals who had ventured into the area and come away changed. They recorded their own experiences and observations, but they did not attempt an exorcism or any formal spiritual intervention. This was not a haunted house that could be cleansed. This was not a possessed object that could be contained. This was something deeper and more pervasive, something that had been building for centuries. Ed and Lorraine concluded that Dudleytown was beyond the scope of conventional religious intervention. The curse, if that is what it was, had become part of the place itself in a way that could not simply be removed. Today, Dudleytown is privately owned by the Dark Entry Forest Association. Public access is strictly prohibited. This is not simply a matter of property rights or liability concerns. The association made this decision after years of dealing with investigators, curiosity seekers, and thrill hunters who ventured into the ruins and required assistance leaving. Some became disoriented and lost despite the relatively small size of the area. Others experienced psychological breakdowns and had to be escorted out by authorities. The decision to close the area was made out of genuine concern for public safety. The ruins remain, hidden beneath decades of forest growth. Stone foundations mark where homes once stood, where families once gathered, where children once played. The trees have grown over roads and fields. Moss covers the stones, but those who study such things, those who take the paranormal seriously as a field of investigation, continue to regard Dudleytown as one of the most genuinely dangerous locations in American history, not because of dramatic poltergeist activity or violent apparitions, but because of something more insidious and more patient. Chinese letter, EFFECT, of being in that place, of breathing that air, of standing on that ground, is a slow erosion of mental and spiritual well-being that some people never fully recover from. Ed Warren called Dudleytown proof that evil could saturate a place just as completely as it could saturate a person. Lorraine Warren said it was one of the few locations that genuinely frightened her, not in the moment of confrontation, but in the lingering sense that something vast and incomprehensible had made its home there long ago and had no intention of leaving. The Village of the Damned earned its name through more than a century of documented tragedy, madness, and death. The forest has reclaimed the buildings but it has not cleansed the land. Whatever curse fell upon Edmund Dudley in 1510, crossed an ocean, poisoned a village, remains embedded in those Connecticut hills to this very day. Hashtags: paranormal documentary, haunted village, cursed land, Ed and Lorraine Warren, Dudleytown, Connecticut, true horror, abandoned places, dark history, haunted forest, real paranormal investigation, Vanishing Roads, supernatural mystery, creepy stories, American folklore. This story was created with AI assistance, based on documented paranormal case files. All events reference real investigations by Ed and Lorraine Warren.